Hello, my name is Mary Neely. I am a tutor, a teacher, a parent, and the founder of Evolved Education Company. We are a full-service tutoring and advisement company for all of your educational solutions. On this podcast, we'll explore ideas, techniques, and resources that you can use to support your school-aged child to conquer any learning issue. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, I'm Mary Neely, and welcome to another episode of Evolved Education. Today, I'm so excited to bring you another interview with a former student, and in particular, a former student who learned to navigate her anxiety to do amazing things. If you didn't hear last week's episode, you might want to go and pause and go back because there we discussed the anxiety scale for children and how to recognize the signs of anxiety. Today, in our interview, we show you a real success story of a child with high levels of anxiety. I worked as Tatum's tutor for years, and in our work together, she was able to totally reframe and then use her anxiety to her benefit. Now Tatum is a freshman at Penn and using the skills she learned in our tutoring to continue to thrive. I'm so excited for you to have a listen. Hi, Tatum.
Hello.
So good to see you. So I just so appreciate you coming on with us just to chat about your experience in working with me so many years ago. I'm doing this podcast just to share our paradigm and process with more of an audience. And I really wanted to walk down memory lane with some of my initial clients just to share really where some of this came from. Because, I was talking with a student of mine on Wednesday, and she and I were working together around the same time that I was working with you. And we were talking just about how you were actually my teacher as well as me teaching you, because I was starting to really understand that I had a different way of looking at school support at the same time that I was working with you guys. And so I just kind of wanted to explore it a little bit with you in an interview format and share the impact that I believe it made on you, but also, of course, just sharing, how it really catapulted the work that we do here at Evolved Education Company as well. So just to kind of kick things off, I'd love just to have you introduce yourself and just tell us what you're up to right now and where you are, all of those good things, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I'm currently playing Division I volleyball at the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm studying at the Wharton School of Business as a freshman. I am kind of learning right now what I'm really interested in, but right now I'm focusing on business, finance, management, and also some of the life sciences. So I've been taking some pre-med biology courses as well and trying to see where my interests lie.
So fun. So fun. We were just actually talking about how right now it's spring when we're taping this and all of the good weather is happening, which is so exciting. Great. So I wanted to know, do you recall when we started working together? What was the challenge that you were facing at the time? How come your mom called and brought me in?
Yeah, I totally do. So we started working together when I was really young. I would say around second or third grade, so little. And at the time, throughout most of my youth, I was a really driven learner, but I always put a lot of pressure on myself. And I think I struggled with anxiety when I was really young, around 5 years old. And that was probably the most challenging part of my life at the time. And when it came to learning and socializing, I was such a perfectionist that I sometimes would get really frustrated when I didn't master something immediately. I put myself to such a high standard since such a young age. And I think that was really debilitating for me. And so my mother sought out help for me, and it was so transformative because I was able to learn how to master things without getting frustrated. And because I held myself to such a standard from such a young age, I was constantly kind of worried that I wasn't going to be able to achieve that standard. And then when I was able to learn with you and learn ways of learning that were really helpful, I was able to kind of overcome that over the course of our time together, which was so amazing.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember, your mom kind of called and said, something's going on with Tatum, something's going on with math. I don't really know what it is, but we're just noticing it's not going well, right? And I think there were just instances of you getting overwhelmed. And I remember sitting with you one time and we were just working on multiplication and division, just, going in between. It was sort of that year in which you had to learn multiplication, but then now apply it to division. And so the word problems were becoming more complex. And you were moving then from one that you knew to one that you didn't know. And you just started to cry. You were melting down. And I remember just thinking, good, we can use this. I remember thinking, great, you care so much about this work. And I think you were a little shocked initially when I said, this is like, my reaction to you crying was like this huge smile on my face and sort of this like very open posture of just saying, this is amazing. Like, you're so amazing. You care so much about this work. And I knew then that it was all going to be okay. I really didn't quite know how it was going to be okay at the moment, but like, I knew it was going to be okay, which is kind of cool. But I remember you looked at me and you're like, no, Mary, like, this is not okay. This is so not okay on so many levels. And I really appreciated you so much in that moment because you were so available. And I remember just saying, great, like, let's just take a deep breath and I knew I couldn't go on to, like, I had used to kind of work with kids where I would just say, okay, let's just leave that alone because it's difficult and I don't really want to dig into the difficult. So let's go to something that's actually easier for you and we'll work up to it. But with you, it was like, that was not going to work because you did not want to leave that problem alone until you understood it so well. And so I had to keep you there. I had to keep teaching you 500 different ways until you understood it. And it wasn't just like you also pushed me because you did not want to just understand it. You wanted to know it 150%. So you could do it on your own when you went into school. Right. And so I really got very good at like scripting out just the process, but also then just cueing you and saying, okay, when you see this direction, this is what you want to do. Yeah. And like, oh, got it. Right. So you could generalize a little bit more. Do you remember that? Like, do you remember any of that at all?
100%. Okay. And it's so funny because as we're talking about it, I'm realizing like how much I continue to do that. And I think that was really showed through when I did my SATs. Like I was so like, I would not leave a problem until I 100% knew that I could do any type of problem that like the SAT showed me that even remotely looked close to that. And I think it served me so well in the long run. I was able to not get any questions wrong on every math section of the SAT because I refused to take a practice test and not understand how to do every single problem that it presented me with. Yeah. And I think that like, I'm now realizing that commitment that I had at such a young age to making sure that I was so 100% aware of like how to do everything really served me well in the long run. And obviously my anxiety around it and the frustration was so overwhelming at the time. And I was such an intense perfectionist that it was definitely a huge challenge. But I think that I was able to kind of like funnel that intense energy into something that overall was super helpful. And I'm proud of myself at a young age for not giving up and like never saying like, oh, let's just go to something easier, because I never wanted to feel like I didn't know something. And I think that it like part of definitely one of like my character flaws, because I'm like so obsessed with being able to understand everything and perfect everything that I do. But in the long run, I think that I'm proud of myself for kind of always pushing, never like settling, basically, like never saying like, let's just skip it. Let's go back to something easier. That was just like not the way my brain was wired. And it still
was not. And I remember also your mom was such a good teacher to me too, because we have to bring her into it because, she would kind of keep me after and we would talk and she would say to me, I'm fine with giving anyone my kids, but don't mess them up. It was something she said, like just over and over, even your school that you went to, like, she just knew. She was such a intuitive mom in that she really saw your gifts in a way that empowered me as someone who was supporting you to lean into that. Right. And so when I initially engaged with you and saw your struggle, her voice in my mind was also saying, okay, let's not change this. Let's not actually make this something different. Let's actually just channel this in a more productive way, or just think about it a little differently. Right. And so it sort of started this exploration in my practice of tutoring where I would work with kids like you and anyone, really, everyone has their things, right? Like they all come to school, whether you get to have a tutor or not, with some area of challenge, and just starting to say, hey, guess what? Let's actually not label it that way. Let's just label this as what you bring to the table. And let's actually see if we can get this to work for you and not be a feeling of, I'm not doing this right, or this shouldn't be the way it should be, right?
100%.
And so I'm just wondering now, when you brought up this word anxiety, which is a really huge deal in education right now. And I wonder to you, what was your perception of your own anxiety?
I think for me, it was a combination of feeling like I couldn't let myself down and I couldn't let myself disappoint people around me. And I held, like I said, myself to a really high standard throughout my entire life. And when I felt like I wasn't achieving at that standard, I would get anxious and nervous and it would kind of take over. And I think that in the world that I grew up in, there's a lot of pressure that they put on kids to perform academically, athletically. And I grew up in a really high achieving environment with the people that I was surrounded with. And I think that mixed with my own pressures that I put on myself kind of amplified the nervousness that I would have around performance. And overall, one of the biggest things that I've noticed, especially at Penn and especially at Wharton, is every kid around me struggled with the exact same thing. They were all such high achieving people in high achieving environments that put a lot of pressure on themselves and were able to funnel the anxiety that kind of fueled frustration and their perfectionism into something that made them really great. So I've, like you said, trying to not change like what's going on inside my head, not change that energy, but rather like transform it into something that can be really positive and make it so the work that I do and the way that I work with people is even more productive, even more successful and efficient. And so I think that I used to look at my anxiety as a very destructive thing in my life, especially even in sports. I would get super nervous on the court. I didn't want to disappoint my coaches. I didn't want to disappoint myself. But now I've kind of used it to make me push myself even harder in the gym, push myself even harder in class to be the best student that I can be in a more positive way. So I think the way I viewed my anxiety has changed tremendously as I've gotten older.
Yeah. And I remember kind of playing around with you a little bit as a young child. I remember saying to you, when your body feels busy like that, do a math problem, because that means you have the energy, you can get it channeled into something more productive, rather than sometimes when we feel anxiety, it's a very vague there's a very vague experience that we're anticipating, or some kind of pain that we're anticipating. And so what I used to tell you was, just if you're feeling that way, go grab a math problem at that moment and just start doing and acting, because you can use that energy to act instead of this other, like, less productive use of that energy, which is just to kind of go into vague and not really making it concrete or making it work for you. Right.
Right.
And, we experimented with a lot of that, but I mean, the beauty of it too, is that your brain's going to do what it's going to do. I mean, at a certain point too, you're going to sometimes feel anxious about things that are big and vague and maybe unproductive. That's okay. It's just a matter of knowing the difference and having some experience with success, right? And being like, oh yeah, like I know how to do this, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's really cool. And so you also went to a school that had and I was part of the school that you went to, and we worked on the math curriculum there, as I worked there as a teacher. And, it was a very constructive math curriculum, which didn't have a lot of, this is how you do it, this is then go ahead and action it, right? It was a little bit more open-ended. And so you had to really work within an open-ended learning experience. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned about your own style of learning? And like, we did work together on some strategies for some of that at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder if that has helped you then go into now. I'm sure you have a lot of open-ended working pieces that you have to do, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
I think that I learned that I'm a super hands-on person, and that for me, one-on-one help is very, very helpful. And so I think now more than ever, it's been the most challenging because it's so detached. Like my math curriculum currently is incredibly like open-ended because you're basically teaching yourself. I'll have like a few online videos a week instructing me on like multivariable calculus. And then I'm basically told to like, okay, now you should be able to understand this and apply it. And it's really hard. But when I was kind of going through high school and middle school and I was introduced to a more open-ended curriculum, I realized that was in itself a challenge for me because I definitely needed a little bit more concrete help when I was confused and frustrated. So seeking outside resources like tutoring was something that I continue to do throughout my entire education so far. But I definitely felt like when things are more open-ended and you're not kind of like, this is how you do it, this is how you apply it, and now we're going to test you on it, you have to kind of take it into your own hands to realize like what type of learner you are and what resources you need to become most successful. And for me, I realized that when I am kind of sat on my own and not understanding something and I'm feeling like there's like a block mentally, I have to like get myself out of that situation, kind of like reassess the problem, reassess what I'm doing to try and solve the problem, and then kind of go back in maybe with a peer's help or like a tutor's help or a teacher's help. Because if I continuously feel frustrated and I'm sitting there and I'm feeling unsuccessful, then that can spiral really quickly and then you're going to sometimes want to give up. So I've kind of realized the type of learner that I am throughout this entire process and known that when I am feeling frustrated like that, it's best for me like take a step back and then reassess the resources that I need to try and be most successful.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so key. And it's so great. I hear you talking a lot about how you really know yourself now as a learner, right? And I mean, this might evolve as you even go into work life and everything, but certainly always understanding that the solutions really come from within and that you are paying attention to what you need as a learner. And where you don't want to perhaps go is into that area of frustration too long, where you shut down and avoid the learning experience. And then it sort of goes into a larger problem that you then have to handle anyway, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, for sure, makes really good sense. You know, in closing up our conversation today, I just wonder if you can think back to yourself as, you know, a middle schooler, young elementary kid, you know, having these kinds of challenges. Is there anything that you would want them to know, and just, you know, anything that you want to leave us off with as a key takeaway that you've had from your experience as a learner, and also with my very privileged opportunity to support you in your role as well?
Of course, I think that if I could kind of turn to that nervous girl who wanted to succeed so badly, I would just tell her that the challenges that seem so overwhelming right now and the things that are making you nervous and the things that make you frustrated, that's what's going to drive you to be the most successful version of yourself. And the people around you are there to help you grow and learn, and they will help you grow and learn. And I would just tell her that like everything works out in the end, and that yes, you're nervous right now, but take that as a positive because it just means that you care. Like you started off saying, like it means that this is stuff that you want to be the best possible version of yourself that you can be. And that's an amazing quality to have. And I think that sometimes I would feel nervous that people would judge me for being anxious or for getting upset about a problem, like seems so silly at the time. But now I'm realizing that that was a quality that I'm so happy that I had, because it really did drive me throughout my entire continued academic career and athletic career and everything. So I would just tell her that it all works out in the end and that I'm really proud of her. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm so proud of her too. And that's your superpower. It's your superpower. That's what I would tell you. I would be more confident. I think if I could speak to myself as I was working with you all those years ago, I would urge her to be more confident with her intuition around working with you and other students. Because now that I'm, of course, many years beyond that, I feel so very confident in the work that we did together. And I'm so excited to bring it to a larger scale. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Tatum. And I really wish you all the best. Although I know I don't need to, because I know you're on your way to impacting our world already. So thank you so much for having the time today to speak with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I've had the most incredible experience with you my entire life. So I'm always happy to talk to you.
Thanks, Tatum. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to Evolved Education. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and write a review. You can send us any and all educational questions to hello@evolveded.com, and we'll try to address it in our upcoming episodes. That's Evolved Ed, EVOLVEDED.com. To learn more about how we can support you, go to evolveded.com and book a complimentary 15-minute phone call with us. Are you a professional educator? You can join our teaching school membership platform to gain support and engage in a community interested in learning together. Click on the link in our show notes to learn more.